Hey ladies, thank you so much for joining me today for Embryo Adoption 101. My name is Nancy Weiss. I am a fertility coach and Reiki practitioner, and I help women develop a positive mindset and just find their strength and resiliency to get through the ups and downs of fertility challenges so that they can call in the baby of their dreams. Um, I'm so happy that you're joining me today to learn more about embryo adoption. And as you may know, that's how we got our little Luna, who this week is going to be 3 months old already. Can't believe that's happened so fast. Um, so I wanted to just tell you a little bit about my story. And now my husband and I started trying to conceive in January of 2015. And we went on for a good 10, 11 months or so, or actually a little bit less than that. And I kind of knew that we would have to reach out to a IVF clinic, just because things weren't happening. And to truth be told, we were older. I think we were 40 at that time, so both of us. So we started with IVF. We went kind of straight into that, and from October 2015 to I think January 2016, or even a little bit further than that, I did 4 egg retrievals. I actually kind of lost count. I did between 4 and 5 egg retrievals, so multiple times getting eggs and making embryos. And we did about 6 transfers, six between fresh and frozen transfers. So we just kept trying. I did not want to give up. So I kept going through egg retrieval after egg retrieval. We'd make some embryos. Sometimes we would get, one time we got 11 eggs. Another time we just got 2 eggs. Some of them made to 5-day blast. Some did not. I had a miscarriage in between at one point in July of 2016, and so we were just run a big roller coaster, and just kept trying. I did all sorts of things, in terms of health, meditation, eating right, keeping my body clean. So I did try all the kind of like the general things to start off with, especially as a holistic health coach. That was something that was really important to me, was to try naturally. That's what I wanted to do. So I kind of felt like I did all the things to get me there, with between different supplements and things like that. And so, we had just recently had another transfer, that frozen embryo transfer, that was negative. And was just kind of trying to figure out, okay, what was our next step going to be? Because it takes a real toll on your body to go through so many egg retrievals and surgeries and things like that. And so I was at a friend's house. Now, mind you, I had been a fertility coach for a while now, so I kind of knew a lot about, all the things that go on, and different types of tests and different procedures. But I had never heard about embryo adoption until one night I was at a friend's house, and they have twins via IVF, and she had mentioned that they had a bunch of embryos left. And she told me, she said, "Oh, well, sometimes, she goes, we're still paying for storage." She goes, "But some people actually donate them to other couples." And I couldn't believe that. I feel like I never heard of it, especially again, being in the industry and being in all the different groups and knowing different coaches. No one ever mentioned this embryo adoption. And so I was really curious. And I mean, as soon as I got home that night, I just started Googling embryo adoption, embryo donation, and just trying to just kind of soak in everything that I could about the process. So there, I noticed that there were many different ways like that people would go about, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, about getting and receiving embryos. But we had just had that negative cycle, and we were due to visit our doctor at the clinic to talk again about what happened, what our game plan was. He had been talking about an egg donor for a good 6 months, but it wasn't something that I was ever comfortable with. So at our next visit, I asked him, "Hey, what's this whole thing about embryo adoption?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, we do that." And I just didn't understand why we had never been told about it. And it seems like it's just not as popular, or it's not something, it's not one of the first things that they offer you. It's like you go from IVF, and then if that doesn't work, a lot of times, especially being over 40, they tell you to use donor eggs, which can run up to $30,000 depending on where you are. And then it was like I kind of had to ask about this embryo adoption. And they said, yes, we do that at the clinic. And so my husband and I looked at each other, and we just kind of knew that it was definitely what we wanted to do. We were totally about it. I had kind of told my husband about it prior. And then we found out that, yeah, this is something that could actually happen. So that was how we came upon learning about embryo adoption. It kind of just all happened really fast. It was super exciting. I think very exciting too because my husband is adopted from birth. And I don't know, it just seemed right for us. Again, I didn't like the idea of egg donor. Um, there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has a different personal perspective on things. But the embryo donation, embryo adoption, and the terms are interchanged here, was just so exciting for us. And also compared to the price, the cost of it, for us it was $4,500. So 30,000 for an egg donor versus $4,500 for these embryos that were already created was just an incredible thing. And it makes it, I think, makes it more accessible to a lot of people. Not everyone has $30,000 to keep plunking over and over again, though egg donor does have a really high success rate. um, it just made it even more perfect for us. But so today I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the different ways that you can get an embryo, get to receive embryos for adoption, that you adopt. Um, and our way was through the clinic, but there are different ways to do it. So when I started researching, I found a lot of different agencies that do it, that either, match up, they match up people. So you go on their website, you put in your information about you and your husband, and I'm giving the very simple version of it. So you're putting that information in, and you go through different, legal things. You go through personal characteristics, your what you look like, your personality, things like that, and kind of like putting up a profile. And I kind of call it's like a match.com for embryo adoption. So there's many of those. There's different types of those. Um, there's also a Christian one called nightlight.org. And I think they're the ones that actually nicknamed them snowflakes. The little embryos that are nicknamed snowflakes, which I love so much. Um, and nightlight.org actually promotes open adoptions. Just like adopting a child, there are different ways to have um, future connections with those children. So for us, the clinic did that anonymously, meaning the other family donated their embryos. We don't know who they are. They don't know who we are. There was no picking and choosing on their part of who would receive them. But we did get to choose, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So some like open adoptions, meaning the other family wants to know this child once they are born. They want to, have them introduce them to their siblings, which may, for some people that may be a really great option. Some people like a semi-closed adoption, where the family would maybe send a letter or two during the year, or you might forward a picture or two of your child to them so that they can see, and it's kind of done legally. It's done like that. Sometimes you'd send that information to a lawyer, and then that lawyer would send it off to that family, and vice versa. So it does keep it like closed, where you're somewhat anonymous, but you're still keeping in touch. And then there's the closed one, like we did. So we don't know who the other family is. We don't know the other siblings that Luna may have. And again, there were a bunch of embryos, so we have Luna, and there's another family that received embryos too, so we know that there were 5 left over, so it could be, mixed among a whole bunch of different people, and which is still kind of really cool to think about. um, Another way to receive embryos would be through private. If you know of a friend or a relative or someone that has extra embryos and then is willing to donate them to you, that would be another way to receive them. There's also places like the NRFA.org, which is the National Registry for Adoption. And again, that's kind of like a match.com for adopters and donators, where you would put up your profile, like say you and your partner put up your profile, who you are as people, why you want children, what you're looking for, and they would then, the other family with the embryos basically chooses you to receive their embryos. So that is very, very personal. So that is another way to go about it. For us, getting back to us, ours was through the clinic, through our clinic. So we didn't have to travel anywhere. In some cases, if you find a family in Texas and you're in New York, you're going to have to figure out, okay, legally, and they have this pre-set up for you on how to do these things. Are the embryos being shipped to you in New York City and you're going to your own clinic? Or some places require that you must go to their clinic. So there may be other costs, like travel costs if you need to go to another state to receive the embryos, to have them transferred, to be followed up by their doctor until you're cleared. So there is, a lot to think about depending on which route you choose, and what the rules are for that clinic or that organization or that person, and how to set these things up. Um, for us, you had to be a patient of the clinic in order to receive embryos. So that's how it worked for us. So basically what we did was we went to our clinic. The doctor said, yes, we do embryo donation, embryo adoption. And we were like, okay, we want to do this. Please, give us all the paperwork. Tell us what we need to do. And so it started out with taking some blood tests, and they checked for STDs. I believe I also had to have an HSG just to make sure that my uterus was clear, there was nothing blocking. So if you have, this is great for women that are older, that are, have unexplained infertility, have low AMH and high FSH. A lot of things comes up with, I have low ovarian reserve. Here's the case. You don't need to worry about your own eggs. You don't need to worry about that because you are given, this embryo that's already made. So it doesn't matter if you have poor egg quality or low egg quality or no egg quality, or you have sperm issues. Those are things that you don't need to worry about anymore. And for us, Chris and I had both of those. We had, my age, I was 40, I'm 41. And then Chris, also same age, and he had poor morphology. So we had issues on both sides that we just couldn't seem to figure out naturally. We couldn't seem to improve those numbers even with the trying that we did. So if you have endometriosis, this is another great thing. If you have PCOS, this is another great way to have that baby that you've been trying for so long, because you don't need to worry about these outside factors affecting this. Things that would affect it would be like very large fibroids or things like that, where you're affecting the uterus is affected, or the shape of it. So that's one of the things that they require. They checked us for STDs and things like that, and just some general checkups. We also had to visit a psychologist, and we didn't need to pass a test or anything in order to receive the embryos. But basically, the psychologist met with us to kind of go over all of this. It is such an interesting subject and an interesting thing. So we talked about, how would we discuss it with our child, how would we discuss it with our family, what it meant to us. And it kind of just helped us work some things out and raised questions for Chris and I to discuss. I think it makes it a little bit easier for me because Chris is adopted from birth. So he kind of grew up knowing that. And I think in the future, that's really going to help, just explaining it to Luna. And and all that whole process of explaining it to her. So after we were cleared with all of our medical and our tests and blood tests and things like that, we then filled out a profile. And basically, it was physical characteristics. So I filled out my height, my weight, the build of my body, my color of my eyes, the color of my hair, um, religion, and things like that. So basically, all the physical kind of characteristics and some other things. My husband did the same, putting all that in it. We had to fill out some other questions of, what we were looking for, why we wanted to do this, and that went off to the nursing coordinator of that program. And so um, every place is going to be different. So clinics have a different wait list. And now it is really starting to gain popularity. You're starting to see it in the media about embryo adoption. I think recently there was a woman that had a baby and the embryo was frozen for 24 years. Our little Luna was frozen for 13 years before we did our frozen embryo transfer, which just, it absolutely blows our mind. So again, back there are there's a wait list, depending on what clinic you go to. Also, if you're looking for a very particular match, like an interracial match, like say you're Indian and your husband is Irish, and you want to try and find embryos that are the same or similar, those types of matches are harder to come by. So that is something that you need to pay attention to when you have really different, as opposed to Caucasian and Caucasian, or African American, there can be a little bit more of a wait in trying to find the embryos that you really, that match you. Um, so, we were told that there could have been a year wait list, but the nursing coordinator got back to us, and it literally within 2 weeks saying, "Hey, I have these matches for you. I have this one match. I think it's going to be absolutely perfect for you." We also sent pictures of ourselves to her. I mean, it's very personal for her too in matching the families together. So she said, "I really think this for you, Nancy. You have a very kind of exotic look about you. I am German and I'm Sicilian and German and a couple other little things. My husband, we believe he is Irish and Italian. He's got a little mix of him too." And so we were sent 3 profiles, but the one that she said that we would really love, she said, really look at this very well. And we read the profile, and basically it was kind of the same thing back. We got the profile of the sperm donor, I'm going to call them, the egg donor, of this family, and we saw their characteristics, their physical characteristics. But then we were also given personality traits to learn about them, and they asked them different questions like, what excites you? What do you do well? What kind of sports do you play? Do you work out? Do you exercise? What did you like to do as a kid? Do you draw? And it was just like kind of, reading like all this information about them. And it also gave us their health history. And they looked back through their grandparents, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles for a myriad of health concerns: cancer, psychological issues, alcoholism, drug abuse, heart attacks, strokes, skin cancer. I mean, literally a list this long. And it basically listed, okay, who in their family had what issue, if any. And this happened to be it was very clean. So they didn't really have any of these type of health issues. But we read the profile of certain things. And one of the things that made Chris excited was that the female had said that she runs fast. And Chris, my husband, is a crazy runner. Runs like, he can run a mile in under 5 minutes, which is ridiculous. So that excited him. For me, I saw that the female, she really liked, she was in interior design, and really was a family person and really enjoyed raising her children and really enjoyed doing her interior design. And she was an entrepreneur running her own business, which is what I do. And I just like, you can see me smiling so much now. I just and tearing up. I just, both of us read this profile of this family and it brought tears to our eyes. We just absolutely knew that this was the one, that this was our match. And we did look at the other matches, but we just came back to this one and we said, wow, this is it. So we said yes, and we received the embryos. We actually received two with this. You actually had to have a positive pregnancy test first before you were able to request an additional if it was available, which we did. So once we were approved, we basically then got ready for a frozen embryo transfer. And that works just like a regular IVF cycle, a regular frozen transfer. I think it was about 6 weeks preparation. It feels like it's a long time ago now, but that was April 5th, 2017, is when I had my frozen transfer. And weeks before, I was starting with, I think I might have gone on the birth control pill for a couple of weeks just to kind of straighten things out for them. Then on to Lupron, injectable Lupron, estrase, estrogen pills, aspirin, and then started the progesterone shortly before transfer. And basically went in for the embryo transfer, which, if you've done that before, is like a really, really simple procedure. It's kind of like going to the gynecologist's office. They insert the catheter with the embryo, and we did one embryo only. That's all they would let me do because there's a 60% 60% rate of success. And they just didn't feel really comfortable, especially me being 42, of having twins, though I'm sure I could have done it. But they just wanted to do one only, and so we were fine with that. So we went ahead and did our frozen embryo transfer, and 2 weeks later, or even 10 days later, was our pregnancy test, our beta. And it was incredible. I felt the magic happening, and I had been talking to Luna for months, even before we knew about embryo adoption. If you know about me, I've talked about spirit babies and talking to your children even before, even now, when you don't even know how they're coming to you. And yeah, that morning, I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a pregnancy test. We always like doing that with our transfers, because it's kind of uncomfortable just going into the doctor's office, taking the blood test, going back home, and just sitting there waiting by the phone for something to happen. And we know not to take it as 100%, but it just felt more comfortable to us to kind of know, especially when they were, when they were negative. It was good for us to know in advance, what the news was for ourselves, and kind of just work on that together. So yeah, I took it, and oh my goodness, it was incredible to see that positive test. I still have it in my drawer. I still look at it to this day, even though Luna is 3 months old. It's in my drawer with my makeup and stuff like that, and I love looking at it because it was such an incredible moment to see that positive pregnancy test. And I had an amazing pregnancy, and little Luna was born on December 31st, on this New Year's Eve. So it has really been an incredible journey for us. I really feel that embryo adoption is just something that it's just not talked about enough. And that's why I'm really trying to become an advocate for it. And I'm talking to people and journalists and magazines and on Instagram and everywhere, kind of everywhere I can find, and in the group, and letting people know about embryo adoption, because it's just an incredible gift. It's an incredible gift. And we wouldn't be here, I wouldn't have her here today if it weren't for this and for the incredible gift that this other family has, donated for us. So yeah, when you know you have all these, if a couple has a bunch of leftover embryos, they're faced with either keeping them frozen indefinitely, which some people do, and there is no right and wrong. It's a very personal decision. So some couples just keep them frozen. Some couples donate them to science. Some couples have them destroyed. And then there are some couples that donate them. And so that's how they kind of come to be. Each clinic is going to have a different number of embryos. Different places are going to have different tests and what you're required to do. With things like nightlight.org and some of those other, private matching not companies, but private matching registries, they require you to do a home study. So as if you were adopting a child. So they require weeks of home study and passing that, visiting psychologists, making sure, whatever, everything's okay and stable. So, our way, I feel, was really simple. We did, the certain amount of things, but it was such a very simple process because we had the access to the embryos right here in our state, right through our doctors. So I didn't have to change doctors. I didn't have to go anywhere. So for me, I think that would be, if you are interested probably in an anonymous type of situation, that probably be a great way to go, is to contact your clinic or local clinic and find out if they have that type of program. Um, and again, it's very different. Maybe you do want an open adoption and you do want to meet that other family and meet their children and have, your child and their children, their siblings. So getting to know each other and knowing that they're family. I kind of do look back, like I do kind of think about it sometimes. I'm like, I kind of wish maybe Luna we did know who the family was. I think the biggest thing is I just want to thank them for such an incredible gift. Um, it's absolutely completely changed our lives. And I can't, again, it's like I can't thank them enough. So if this is something that you're interested in, I would definitely, start looking into it. And if you've never heard it before, I'm so excited to be able to tell you about this now. Um, Please feel free to ask me any questions. You could post it in the YouTube video. You can post it in my private Facebook group, Empowered Fertility for the Holistic Chick. That's Fertility for the Holistic Chick. That is a private group, so no one can see that you're in that group. And you can come and ask questions. I'm also on Instagram as Nancy Weiss _ fertility coach. So you can always post in there to find out more, and you see me putting out some photos and different things. So yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask me. I so look forward to them. I'm an open book, so I definitely love to share, and I love supporting you. So please, yeah, let me know how much you enjoyed this. Let me know if you want to know more, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye, ladies.